Watch out, because this is the playbook. Hi, my name is Arie. This is 10 Points to Ponder, where we like to talk about all the things that get you canceled: race, politics, Jesus, and manhood. Normally, I like to just write a couple of notes and then come off kind of unscripted, but today I have a whole page of notes because I want to be very clear about the topic that I'm talking about. And also, I needed to write this page of notes because I was on vacation and it was going to ruin my vacation until I wrote this stuff down. So, everyone knows about the Joe Rogan Controversy, right? There is a huge podcast host on Spotify by the name of Joe Rogan. You might know him from UFC, a UFC announcer. You might know him, if you're older, from Fear Factor. How did it first start? It first started because Joe Rogan messed with their money. He had Robert Malone on, who is, at least bills himself as the inventor of mRNA technology, which is being utilized in the, you know what I'm talking about, for this disease, this pandemic that we're going through. He goes on and raises some questions regarding it and alternative treatments. All of a sudden, on YouTube, that video got pulled off of YouTube. There was huge backlash against that episode. So now people got involved and decided that really they're going to try to cancel Rogan because he's got, I believe, 11 million listeners throughout. So he's doing better than mainstream news. He's doing better than NPR. He's doing it independently. And he's not forced to put people on that present a certain viewpoint, and he asks actual questions. So it started with Neil Young, who's you know, an old time. I actually like Neil Young's music. An old time musician, rock and roll musician. I believe he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He decides that he's going to pull his music off of Spotify because he doesn't want to be associated with misinformation. When Neil Young did this, truth be told, no one cared. Absolutely no one cared. They're like, well, you know, we're still going to listen to Joe Rogan over you, old man. Second, other artists then joined suit, including Arie and including Joni Mitchell. So they joined suit. And Spotify then decides that they're going to put a content label on any podcasts that are related to COVID misinformation or information so that people can go to the approved government information, right? That has been 100% correct and infallible throughout the entire duration of this pandemic. Straight from Fauci's mouth, right? So, after that, Rogan very astutely offers a rebuttal, and he does a video about misinformation, and he basically says that misinformation today may be true tomorrow, and he cites the origin of the disease. He cites masking and its efficacy, how that has changed. He also cites the immunity claims that first were presented in regards to getting the vaccine. So that's a pretty masterful video that he put out, and it just made people even more angry. Because he was so masterful in his video, they switched tactics. They decided that they were going to use Arie, comes out and says she doesn't want to be associated because Joe Rogan is a racist. And people are like, how is he racist? What has he done that's racist? Joe Rogan works with black people and he interviews UFC. Like, no one believes that Joe Rogan is actually racist just based on years, decades of his history. Anyway, India Arie is somehow given or comes into possession of something that she retweets, which is a video of Joe Rogan over the last 10 years using the N-word and leaving out the actual context in which he has used that word. So it just says N, 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 N. No context whatsoever. Because Joe Rogan, when he was doing it, was quoting other people. And this is what happened next. Spotify stood fast and said that despite all this, they want to protect Joe's ability to speak. But then Joe came out and issued this huge apology that, you know, I said it back then and I thought it was okay because I wasn't using it in a abusive manner. I wasn't abusing anyone. And, you know, there's a whole argument to be made in regards of use of the N-word, which if you look at one of my previous videos, you know, the N-word is actually one of the ways that the white liberals have preserved for black people to show that they're authentically black. The more you use the N-word, no matter what your upbringing, no matter how affluent you are, that's how you prove that you're black. So anyway, I think that's ridiculous, but I want to leave that issue aside and talk about what's going on right now. We have a certain tactic that's being used against Joe Rogan. And this is actually part of a playbook. So my guess is that once this tactic doesn't work, they're going to come out with the next thing, which is misogyny, and it's going to be transphobia or homophobia, LGBTQ issues. Because that's what I've seen, is this pattern where if you do something that upsets the apple cart, upsets the liberal elite, they have people that are scouring over years of your past media usage, just waiting for an opportunity to kind of throw something out into the Twitter sphere, and they have all their little trolls, right? People living in their mother's basement, retweeting and sending it to this person and starting change.org to get you canceled and all sorts of things. It's a whole concerted effort. It's not organic. It's not something from the people, because the people know. So people should know, and you should know, listener, that there is a specific playbook. They don't want to debate the issues with you. They want to take you down through labeling. They want to call you crazy. They want to call you a white supremacist. They want to call you homophobic, misogynistic, transphobic. They want to use all these terms against you and label you so that they don't have to deal with the content and the issues that you're bringing forward. Here's a few examples of how this has occurred in our society in recent memory. Remember John Gruden, the coach of the Oakland Raiders? The commissioner, Roger Goodell, didn't like John Gruden because he spoke his mind. And so what did they decide to do? Through the course of an investigation into the Washington football team, right, that had nothing to do with John Gruden, they leaked some emails and first tried by labeling him racist. They tried to say that he called a guy who has big lips, rubber lips. DeMaurice Smith has big old lips. He ain't lying. John Gruden wasn't lying. That didn't work. So next, they dug deeper into the emails and came up with some misogyny, talking about sending pictures of women to different people. And next, they finally were able to take him down and exert enough pressure through the LGBTQ agenda. So then they looked through his emails and found an email initially in which he said that he didn't feel it was right to be forced to draft a gay player. For that, he got fired because, you know, all these bombs go off and finally they found one that stuck. The next example, Gina Carano, right? You remember that Gina Carano was on The Mandalorian. She's a woman, and so the charge of misogyny doesn't apply, and they had to be pretty careful about that. But because she was outspoken regarding COVID, and specifically regarding how people were treating others that disagreed with the lockdowns and disagreed with mandatory vaccination, how people were being treated, she equated that to the way in which people were treated when the Nazis were in power. How they basically got the people to turn against other people. And because of that, she was making some equivalency with history, and thus she got banned for that. Which, when you actually look at it, what's the point of history? Isn't it so that we can learn from it? And what Gina was doing was looking at history, looking at current times, and seeing patterns and trends and saying, whoa, people, this is a warning. As much as you hate the person that refuses to wear a mask, you're making that person less than human. And once we start dehumanizing one another, we create the conditions for fascism, for concentration camps, for any sort of violence against that person. And so that's what she was saying. And for that, she got canceled because she got too close to the truth. Next, Chappelle. Well, unfortunately, Dave Chappelle was black, so they couldn't call him a racist. Darn. They had to move on. Misogyny couldn't work because Dave Chappelle's job is to make you laugh. But what they ultimately tried to get Dave Chappelle on was LGBTQ. And they staged massive protests. Netflix employees were walking out of the work site, and they were all in an uproar. Even today, they've refused to play some of his movies, and they've kind of tried to make him a marginalized figure. And that's how the playbook works. They get one thing, that doesn't stick. They get another, that doesn't stick. They get a third thing, that doesn't stick. They get a fourth thing, and then finally, they get you down. How do you combat this playbook? Understand, first of all, that these sorts of attacks are satanic in origin. Satan is always seeking someone to devour and awaiting an opportune time. After Jesus was tempted by Satan and was victorious, it said that the enemy left him and waited for an opportune time to come back. And so we know that these attacks are continuing and relentless. Second thing, understand that these attacks are devoid of grace. Satan goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whomever he can devour. This is exactly what people are doing when they're looking for something against someone else. They're devoid of grace, and they're extremely hypocritical. I'm sure Stacey Abrams went out many times forcing and bloviating and being so self-righteous about people wearing masks. And yet look at this picture. Look at Stacey Abrams right now doing a photo op in which she demanded that every one of these kids wears a mask. And what's she doing? What's she doing? And that is a picture of the radical left. That's a picture of what these people do. They don't even follow the rules that they try to impose upon others because it's not about the rules, and they know that these rules mean very little. It's just about power. It's just about controlling you. What's the lesson here from Joe Rogan? First lesson, when they come for you, do not apologize. If you don't feel you were wrong, then do not apologize. If you feel that you were wrong, then apologize for the part in which you were wrong. But understand that a lot of times apologies to the radical left that are coming after conservative voices are actually considered a confession. They're basically something. I'm guilty of some things in my life. I just didn't do all the, who cares? You're guilty of something. That's how people look at it. They don't care about justice and righteousness or even degrees. They just want you to admit that you're guilty of something. All this does is embolden further attacks. The truth is that no one is perfect, and we will all err in our words and opinions that we have held. So no need to apologize for being a human being. You know, the primary thing that I was thinking about with this entire controversy is a scripture that always, it's a rhetorical question that is asked, I believe, by the psalmist. And the psalmist asks, if the Lord should mark iniquity, who could stand? The answer to that is no one. If every moment of your life was rehearsed, recorded, seen by the masses, and people had the ability and were given the ability to say, to see you at your worst, to see you at your weakest moment, how could you stand? How could you walk out your door every day and face other people? Because, you know, outside of the grace of Jesus Christ, I don't know how you do it. I know myself. I know the ways in which I've sinned and repented of. And I'm so glad that the Lord does not mark iniquities. And what is most satanic about these attacks is that that's exactly what they're doing. They're keeping a record of all the wrongs that you've done, and they're waiting like Satan for an opportune time to bring them right to your face, right to the forefront, and accuse you by basis of using all of this information out of context. That's why I think that not only are these tactics, you know, wrong, but they're evil and wicked from the pit of hell. The saga continues. I hope that Joe Rogan will stop apologizing and just go about his business. I actually also hope that he takes the offer that's been given to him by Rumble. Rumble offered him $100 million to move his podcast from Spotify to Rumble. Maybe it's time to do that. Or maybe it's time that he starts something of his own and take his audience to that place and start a revolution where big tech no longer gets to control the narrative, and the Twitter mob no longer gets to control, but we, the people, get to make decisions on what we want to listen to, what we want to hear, and what we don't want to hear. And we make those decisions by what we spend our money on. And so those are just a few of my thoughts. Let me know what you think about this whole controversy. My name is Arie, and this has been 10 Points to Ponder.